Daniel Kawczynski to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship in a debate on the redevelopment of Shrewsbury Town Centre. We're very proud of Shrewsbury, the county town of Shropshire. And of course, the Minister may know that Shrewsbury has more listed buildings than any other town in England. That is quite a unique attribute. And having more listed buildings than any other town in England means that we have outstanding architectural beauty in our historic town. Edwardian, Elizabethan, many other architectural periods have thrived in Shrewsbury. And of course, Charles Darwin, it is the home. It was the birthplace of Charles Darwin and the home of Charles Darwin, where he studied at Shrewsbury School before pursuing such a famous and relevant career. So, of course, this historic beauty of the town, surrounded by the beautiful Shropshire countryside, actually means that tourism is one of the most important major income generators for our town. Now, I'm very pleased to have secured a direct train service between Shrewsbury and London. This is extremely important for additional international tourists visiting our town. We've also now secured the funding for the North West Relief Road, a vital artery in the ring road around Shrewsbury, which is going to be built shortly. And having secured those two important infrastructure projects in recent times, my mind now turns to, as a local Member of Parliament, my mind turns to how I can support the Council, Shropshire Unitary Authority, in its attempt to redevelop our town centre. And I spent the summer, Mr. Sharma, I spent the recess actually lobbying extensively the previous Secretary of State in the Department for Levelling Up and his junior ministers. We had many meetings, many conversations about the extraordinary opportunity that we have in the heart of Shrewsbury to convince the Levelling Up Fund that this is a project that needs investment. Unfortunately, as you will know, Mr. Sharma, the reshuffle which took place saw almost a clean sweep of all the ministers. But I welcome my honourable friend to his position. I think from my conversations with him, he will make an outstanding minister in the department. And I'm very grateful that he is here today to hear my appeals for this project directly to him and his officials. I was nevertheless very disappointed, I have to say, that in the recent round of Levelling Up Fund announcements, we were very disappointed in Shropshire not to have secured the £20 million that our local council had asked for in order to redevelop the town centre. I will come on later on in my speech, Mr. Sharma, to explain how the council has now got control of 3 major shopping centres in the heart of our town and prime real estate. But we were nevertheless very disappointed that in the council's attempt to secure this funding, that was unsuccessful. And I want to try to use this debate to try to tease out, perhaps from the Minister, a little bit more information as to why we were not successful and what we need to do in order to turn this from a failure into a success. We see massive investment in cities in our region, massive investment in cities like Manchester and Birmingham. And we see huge investments in the so-called red wall seats. And, of course, in places like Stoke-on-Trent. If I had £1 for every time I heard that Levelling Up funding was going to Stoke-on-Trent or one of the other red wall seats, I would have been able to retire by now. I understand why and how red wall seats and inner city areas in the Midlands and in the North need Levelling Up funds. But I want to express my concern that in the quite right levelling up process that this government is putting the country through, in the quite right levelling up process that more money is being spent in the Midlands and in the North, rather than in the uniquely prosperous capital city in the South East, let us take a moment, nevertheless, to look at how that money is being distributed and what percentage of that money is going to inner city conurbations, like Birmingham and Manchester, Leeds and others. Because I would argue, and I will continue to be asking a lot of written parliamentary questions on this, but I would argue that unfortunately, in the great thrust to redistribute this money to the Midlands and to the North, it's going primarily to these inner city conurbations, and the rural shire counties are losing out. This has been my experience over the last 16 years as a Member of Parliament, Mr. Sharma. You will perhaps may know that already in Shropshire we receive a fraction of investment in health, education, roads, and many other public sector services and works. We receive a fraction of the funding across the board in comparison with those inner city conurbations. So we need greater clarity of the process and how these decisions are taken, and when the next round will take place in the Levelling Up Fund agenda, and what criteria is being used to assess the economic benefits of the levelling up investments. I think this is extremely important for the Minister and for his department. As taxpayers, we are particularly interested in value for money and in the return on investment from how this taxpayers' money is being spent. And clearly, when a project wins levelling up funding, it is essential that the department then shares with the electorate not only how the money has been spent, but what are the consequences of that public sector investment in the particular project? What are the outputs of that taxpayers' money investment in terms of GVA uplift for the local economy and indeed jobs and economic prosperity? The council, my council, Shropshire Council, have not heard about future growth deals. And when I was speaking to Professor Mark Barrow, who's a senior officer at Shropshire Council, he wanted me particularly to make this point. They are not cognizant of future growth deals, and they need clarification about the LEPs. We have heard some quite, at times, different assessments and opinions about the LEPs and about their long-term sustainability and operability. May I just take a moment here to pay tribute to the head of the LEP in our area for a long time, Mandy Thorne, a local business lady who has done an outstanding job in managing our LEP. And I would like to ask the Minister for some clarification as to what he perceives to be the future of the LEPs, what role, if any, they are going to be playing in the redistribution of taxpayers' money, so that my council, the LEP and others can plan for these changes. Shropshire Council, to come on to the specific nature of this bid, Mr. Sharma, Shropshire Council have purchased 3 large shopping centres and key prime real estate in the town centre. Pride Hill Shopping Centre, Darwin Shopping Centre and Riverside Shopping Centre. There is controversy about this purchase, I have to say, because, of course, the council purchased these shopping centres at a time when their price tag was much larger than what the whole site is worth today. Inevitably, that sows concern with the local electorate and residents when the council makes a particular purchase of this nature, of tens of millions of pounds, and the value goes down. But nevertheless, why has the value gone down? Well, of course, we know the rapidly changing circumstances of British high streets, the huge changes that are taking place in the way retail shopping is carried out, more and more being done online, So on the one hand, I can understand why some people could be reticent and concerned that the council has bought these sites. But on the other hand, I must tell you, Mr. Sharma, the previous private sector owners did almost nothing to this site, and we did not have confidence that they were going to be able to develop it in a way that would be of benefit to Shrewsbury. So nevertheless, the council now own this prime real estate in the heart of the county town of Shropshire. And so it is absolutely critical that, bearing in mind what I've said to you about the changing nature of the high street and how we have to adapt ourselves in order to create a lucrative and an exciting opportunity for people to visit our high street, it is now absolutely critical to set aside the controversy over this purchase and to ensure that we do everything possible to help our council to develop this site in a way which will be commensurate with the interests of the local community and from an economic perspective. Now, we can have a debate as to whether or not these things should be done by the public sector or whether they should be done by the private sector. I know that I've spent an equal amount of my time working in the private sector, 16 years, as I have in the public sector, 16 years. There are attributes, there are weaknesses and strengths on both sides. That I know. This debate is not a debate about whether the private sector or the public sector should develop the site. This debate is about the reality of the situation, that the council own this site, and as the Member of Parliament, I need the Minister to be cognizant of this opportunity. I've heard from Professor Mark Barrow that there are many opportunities already and many private sector companies who are seeking to invest in this site once a decision has been taken as to how it's going to be redeveloped. And Professor Mark Barrow informs me that they predict hundreds of millions of pounds in investment into Shrewsbury Town Centre when a plan of demolition of some of these sites and redevelopment can start to take place. And we've had very prestigious hotel chains expressing an interest in building and buying plots. There's also an opportunity to reduce retail space to match changing nature of retail shopping. So in order to help some of those small independent retail outlets on Pride Hill, something that Shrewsbury is famous for, those small little retail outlets, rather than the huge superstores they get in Telford and elsewhere. So reducing the space is also very important in terms of sustainability. And also there's an opportunity to build a lot of commercial housing on the site, including affordable housing, which I'm sure you will agree with me, Mr. Sharma, is an increasingly important thing for councils and the government to take into consideration, bearing in mind how difficult it is for young people today to get on the housing ladder. And of course there are other modern facilities which will attract people into the town centre, not just from Shropshire, but also from mid-Wales. We're very proud to be the gateway to Wales in Shrewsbury as a border town, and we benefit a great deal from many people coming not just from all over Shropshire, but from mid-Wales to do their shopping in Shrewsbury. I'd like to end by referring to Peter Freeman. And I would like to ask the Minister to arrange for Peter Freeman and his team at Homes England to meet with Shropshire Council officials to discuss the best way forward for this development. I've been led to believe that the previous Secretary of State appointed Peter Freeman as the new chair of Homes England in October 2020. Peter Freeman is co-founder of the property developer Argent and is well known as one of the visionaries behind the revival of King's Cross, as well as major developments in Birmingham and Manchester. He has a track record of planning and delivering the regeneration of local areas and creating spaces that are both socially and economically vibrant. So that is my ask, Mr. Sharma. I would like the Minister to please engage with his experts in the ministry, people like Mr. Freeman, who has a reputation, a national reputation, for having the expertise and the knowledge to be able to support and move forward these type of projects very successfully around the country. And I would also like the Minister, on bended knee, to seriously consider this £20 million that Shropshire Council desperately need now to redevelop the site. I think I heard somewhere today, I will be corrected if I'm wrong, but I think I heard today, Mr. Sharma, that my council spends 84% of all revenue it has on adult and children social care. 84%. My council is desperately short of funding. We have a rapidly ageing population. We have a ticking bomb with adult social care costs in the county. This injection of cash into our town centre to regenerate economically the prosperity of the town would give the council and the whole of the community a huge boost. And I ask the Minister to look upon our bid kindly and mercifully.
Thank you. The question is that this House has considered Shrewsbury Town Centre redevelopment. Minister Neil O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And it's also a pleasure to listen to the passionate speech of my right honourable friend, and I'd congratulate him for securing this important debate this afternoon. And I congratulate him on his unwavering commitment, which I know from first-time experience of talking to him in advocating for his constituency. There's a number of things in my honourable friend's speech today which I strongly agreed with. I strongly agreed with him that levelling up is an agenda for the whole country, not just some parts of it. I agreed with him about the essential importance of accountability, about value for money, about understanding better what use taxpayers' money is being put to. And I want to use the time that's remaining to talk a bit about how the levelling up agenda can serve Shrewsbury and the rest of my honourable friends' constituency. Mr. Chairman, the levelling up agenda is about empowering local leaders and communities. It's about boosting living standards, particularly where they're lower. It's about spreading opportunity and improving public services, particularly where they're weak. And it's also about ensuring that communities right across the UK can take pride in their neighbourhoods and the places that they call home. And my honourable friend spoke very passionately about some of the glories of Shrewsbury this afternoon and some of those things that people are quite rightly very proud of. And I've been very encouraged by what I've read about Shrewsbury and the vision and the plan of local leaders, particularly Shrewsbury's big town plan, which is extremely exciting. And that includes, of course, the ambitious redevelopment of the Riverside Shopping Centre, which was included in the bid that my honourable friend spoke about this afternoon. Now, as my honourable friend knows, the Chancellor recently announced the award of the first 1.75 billion to 105 successful bids from just the first round of the 4.8 billion that will be going through the Levelling Up Fund. And assists bids were assessed completely impartially by officials against 4 different components about value for money, deliverability, strategic fit, and characteristics of place. And in the interest of transparency, alongside the winning bids, my department has published an explanatory note detailing the Levelling Up Fund assessment and exactly how bids were shortlisted and decisions were reached. But sadly, many, many more bids were received and there was available funding in this first round. I'm sure my honourable friend knows that this was a very competitive process with lots of strong bids, but I hope I can assure him that this is not the end of the process. And while Shropshire Council's bid to support the regeneration of Shrewsbury wasn't successful in this round, I would strongly encourage them to bid again in the second round of that £4.8 billion fund, which is expected in spring of next year, to answer the question my honourable friend asked. The Levelling Up Fund, of course, though, isn't the only mechanism through which we are supporting levelling up Shrewsbury and Shropshire, and it's not the only opportunity that will be available. Just to touch on some of the things we've already done, as part of our ambition to rebalance the economy, the government has invested over £6 million into Shrewsbury's transport infrastructure over the last 5 years. And this funding from our local growth fund has supported the Shrewsbury integrated transport package to improve road junctions, invest in sustainable transport and improve the commercial centre of the town. I also congratulate my honourable friend on helping his area to secure that very important improved train connection that he mentioned in his speech. And that funding has been complemented by a further £2 million from the Local Growth Fund in 2019 to help restore the iconic Shrewsbury Flax Mill Maltings, which is home to the world's first iron-framed structure, complementing all those other wonderful heritage buildings that we heard about in my honourable friend's speech. And more recently, I was pleased that £5 million from the Getting Building Fund has supported Shropshire Council in their remodelling of the Pride Hill Shopping Centre, which will create 250 well-paid jobs in the process. I'm sure my honourable friend will agree with me that this is levelling up in action. It's testament to this government's ambition to support Shrewsbury to grow and thrive in the coming years. But we recognise that much more needs to be done. And I know that some of the projects I've mentioned today have in the past been supported by European funding, and now that we've left the EU, there is scope to go much further and faster. And that is one of the reasons why the Chancellor confirmed over £2.6 billion for the forthcoming UK Shared Prosperity Fund, another opportunity to level up Shropshire, over the spending review. And that will ramp up to £1.5 billion a year by 24-25, and total spending will, at a minimum, match the size of EU funds in each nation of the UK. We'll be publishing further details about the Shared Prosperity Fund in due course, and I would also encourage my honourable friend to ensure that Shropshire Council is aware of the opportunities that the fund presents.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, and I'm listening intently. Just before he finishes, can I actually take this opportunity also to invite him to visit Shrewsbury in the Christmas recess? I'd like to invite him just so that he can see for himself the town centre.
Minister.
Well, I'm extremely grateful to my honourable friend's invitation. We'll try and find a time. Nothing would give me greater pleasure. It sounds wonderful, and I'm very interested in all these different things and how levelling up agenda can help places like Shrewsbury. Now, my honourable friend today has been focused on regeneration, quite rightly, a challenge facing all places really at the moment as we move towards more shopping online and as town and city centres have to change to meet the challenges of this new era. He will, of course, have noticed the funding that was set out by the Chancellor for brownfield regeneration announced in the spending review, and there may well also be opportunities for the local council through those funding streams too, including potentially talking, as my honourable friend mentioned, to Homes England and to the High Streets Task Force, and I will endeavour offline to try and make the connections between local and central government officials that he asked for. However, I think that we would all agree that however far we go with government funding, however many different good and targeted spending streams we have, spending by the government alone can only go so far in fulfilling our levelling up agenda, of course. And we want to encourage strong local leadership to be able to truly deliver, to power the productivity growth that's essential to rebalancing our economy and our country. And one only has to look at the success of some of our metro mayors, like Andy Street, in attracting private sector investment, spurring growth and acting as powerful ambassadors for their regions to see the tremendous potential of further devolution beyond our largest cities. That's one of the reasons why, where there is strong local support, we want to roll out those powers and opportunities to the rest of the country too, using county deals. And I know that my honourable friend has expressed a strong interest in how such a deal in Shropshire could support local regeneration and drive growth across the county. I look forward to discussing this further with my honourable friends. My department prepares to publish its Levelling Up white paper. This will set out our plan to improve livelihoods and opportunity in all parts of the UK, building on our work so far, including on devolution and urban regeneration. Now, my honourable friend mentioned local enterprise partnerships and the great work of Mary Thorne. I would agree with him and also pay tribute to the work of people in local enterprise partnerships. Earlier this year, we initiated a review into the role of local enterprise partnerships. We now intend to consider the future role of LEPs and the local business voice within that white paper that I just mentioned, alongside our commitment to extending devolution and strong local leadership into county areas. So he will hopefully not have to wait too long for greater clarity on the future role of LEPs. And our Levelling Up Task Force is also working closely with relevant departments across Whitehall to ensure that reform in multiple different policy areas all comes together to empower local leaders and ensure that levelling up will be greater than the sum of its parts. So, Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, I would like to once again thank my honourable friend for his contributions in this debate today and for securing this debate. I'll reflect on the very important points that he made today and continue to engage with him, hopefully take up his offer of a visit, and to work with local partners to support their efforts and pursue this very important agenda. This government intends to equip areas with the tools, the funding and the resources they need to become the masters of their own destiny. And this mission has arguably never been more important than it is today as we forge a national recovery out of the COVID pandemic. The forthcoming white paper will set out further details of our approach and how we can support places like Shrewsbury to realise their own ambitions and plans for growth. Because as my honourable friend set out brilliantly, eloquently, Shrewsbury has a rich history as a vibrant and enterprising town. And together I believe that we can both build on his work and that of his local partners to ensure that Shrewsbury's future is as bright and prosperous as its illustrious part. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The question is that this House has considered Shrewsbury Town Centre redevelopment. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.